Welcome to Crossover the Pond, brought to you by 21 Media Productions and Sports Social. He's Drew Lasker, I'm Josh Sexton, and this is episode 11 as we continue our NBA basketball journey, a short hezzy tween and stutter step away here in the UK. Drew, back to it this week, man. 2026, Happy New Year and all that. You were back on prime duties this week, covering the Nuggets at the Cavs. How was the experience? How was it being back to work? Are you feeling rusty?
No, I mean, the last couple of weeks I've actually felt like I've hit my stride. I really understand what the job entails and how I can bring in a different dynamic. So I felt like the last couple of games, like I really started to raise my levels a little bit. But I went into the game a little bit unsure. I thought it was going to be a dud because the Nuggets were missing 4 out of the 5 starters. Cleveland had been ascending, but, man, we had a game. It came down to the final minutes. Denver really surprised us with their play. A lot of guys that, casuals have probably never heard of really stepped up into that game. So it made my Friday night eventful, man. How about you? How's your week been? What's your New Year's resolution, by the way?
Do you know what? Someone asked me this, or not dissimilar things the other day. They basically said, what's your word of the year? And I decided that mine is growth. Which like in loads of different ways, really. Growth in my career, growth in my personal relationships, growth as a human being always, of course, is a thing that I'm very focused on. And yeah, good week, really. It's been quite relaxed over Christmas, but been able to watch a lot of basketball up until last night. Even I watched the Denver Nuggets against the Nets last night, Drew, and to be honest, I was quite disappointed because I saw the result of that Cavs game. I didn't get a chance to watch it at the time, but I saw the result of it, saw the box score, and was like, okay, these Nuggets without Jokic could be exciting. And the game last night petered out a little bit. It wasn't a virtuoso scoring performance from Jamal Murray that maybe we all expected. In the end, it was basically Michael Porter Jr.'s revenge game, if nothing else. But the Nets, by committee, really, which I know me and you have expressed a couple of times on pods this season. We love to see those teams who really get their scoring by committee. There was a couple of guys in double digits there. So exciting in terms of, maybe seeing some of those I don't want to call them no names. I think you called them something more generous before, but no, the sort of lesser names, let's say, in the NBA come into light, because that's one of the things that I feel like has been a real big theme of this season. But I want to start with some of the bigger names, Drew, and mention that Jokic injury there. Wemby going down with a knee injury in the same week. Honestly, when I saw that Wemby knee injury in the Jokic run, I was like, we might as well just scrap the season right now. Like, call off the MVP race, because if those two guys aren't in it, it's not worth it. It's not worth competing for. Luckily, the Wemby injury was not as bad as first feared, but I've heard a lot of sort of analysts and pundits and things like that, Drew, talking about the 65-game cutoff for MVP, because Jokic is going to return now right at the limit and will surely miss another game or two over the course of the season, you'd have thought. So the question I've been sort of asking myself, and what a lot of these pundits have been asking likewise, is the award, or the cutoff for the award, not fit for purpose if a player who's as good as Nikola Jokic is can't even be in the running for basically one injury in the whole of his season? Like, or do you think that's kind of the point, that injuries are obviously partly conditioning, partly a matter of luck? We've seen that Jokic's conditioning is elite, even though it doesn't always look like it sometimes in terms of his build. Jokic is a guy who can play well over 75 games a season in most cases. So he's just been unlucky this time. And is that kind of the point, that if you are unlucky to get that big injury, then I'm sorry, but you can't compete for these awards?
Yeah, it's a real tricky one, and we have to give context, because at the time that they implemented this rule, guys were really, Kawhi Leonard, I use his name because he's the culprit, but guys were sitting out. And it was happening too often, to the point to where the NBA had to install a rule in regards to the national television games where teams will get fined. So at the time, the rule felt like the right decision, because it was just getting too rampant across the NBA with teams looking to tank, with guys resting. And so the mindset was, well, we can't reward these guys with these individual rewards, and a lot of the money, the contracts, is tied into, these awards. And so it felt fair. Now that we're 3 years into this thing, it needs to be looked at again. And that's the thing about sports. That's the thing about all of these leagues, like, you got to constantly adjust the rules to the times because things move so fast. And now we're starting to see with this season that I'm really afraid to look at what that All NBA team is going to look like at the end of the season, because there's going to be some guys on there, and I don't want to say not deserve, because there's always guys that's on the bubble, and we can debate that every single season. But there's going to be some guys that's not on that list that we're looking at, like, Luka, Antetokounmpo, Jokic, and I can go on and on and on. And let's hope, let's pray that Shea doesn't get injured. I mean, if he gets injured, it could be ugly. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's 82 games in an NBA season. The rule out there is you must play 65 games or more. And, for example, Jokic hasn't missed a game this season, but his injury was a 4-week injury. If he misses those 4 weeks, he could miss 18 games. So basically, with the rule, you're saying that if you get a major injury, let's say hamstrings is usually 2 to 3 weeks, a MCL sprain, mild, grade 2, that's usually 3 to 4 weeks. If you miss 3 to 4 weeks with one injury, you're pretty much excluded from the awards. And to me, that's kind of harsh. So it definitely needs to be looked at again after this season. And I just saw something on Twitter early this morning that I thought was a good idea, that every NBA team needs a hired official from the NBA to regulate what injuries are real and what aren't. So, for example, with Antetokounmpo, with Jokic, you look at them having legitimate injuries, and then you can say, okay, they can still qualify for these rules. So, I don't have the right answer. That's not my pay grade, but to sum it all up, it definitely needs to be looked at the end of this season.
Yeah, me and you have discussed things like this a couple of times, and I'm always sort of struck because you mentioned that, and one of the things we always talk about really whenever we have these conversations, like, we saw this idea pitched on social media, and again, it's an opinion that me and you have expressed on here, but I think there's a degree to which people will never be happy. We bring in these rules to stop guys sitting out games, as you say, to stop that load management being as rampant as it was at one point, and then now it's guys with legit injuries who are being punished. But at the same time, Drew, you see the situation with LeBron now. LeBron missed a lot of the start of the season with sciatica. He's 9th in the All-Star voting. With the new system, I'm not sure what that's going to mean in terms of whether he competes or not. But there's, now a real chance that he doesn't make it to the All-Star game. And there's part of me that's going like, well, that's fair because he missed so much time at the start of the season. Obviously, with LeBron, it's a different narrative to what it is with Jokic in the sense that Jokic is obviously destined to be top 3 for MVP. This injury, of course, stunts that just in terms of this cutoff. But when Jokic comes back, you better believe he's coming back at an MVP, caliber level. Whereas with LeBron is, sort of regressing into more of a role player now towards the back end of his career, and nobody is begrudging him that. But then you've got guys talking about, whether Adam Silver should make an exception because it might be one of LeBron's final All-Star games. I don't believe for a second it'll be his final one. By the way, LeBron is definitely getting a farewell tour. There's no way LeBron's going out the back door. This is the man who made the decision on ESPN once upon a time. Don't ever believe that this guy is going out the back door. But his last few chances to play in the All-Star game, should Adam Silver poke his nose into that and make an exception? And I don't think so, because I think if the NBA are going to bring in these rules, they kind of have to stick by them. And one of the things we always see is when the NBA brings in a new rule, there's immediate resistance to it. Maybe after a couple of years, people start to pitch new ideas for how it can change, and it sort of makes me circle back to, Drew, like, will we ever be satisfied? Because there's a natural inclination here that, like, if LeBron misses time with sciatica, yes, he shouldn't be necessarily considered for the All-Star game. But then there is also that part of me that's going, but Jokic will come back at an MVP caliber level. So even that, like, I can't even satisfy myself in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, no matter what you do, you're never going to be able to please everyone. I mean, I'm a huge NFL fan, and, last night it was a win or go home, the very last primetime game, Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, and it came down to a field goal. Baltimore drove down the field. They kick the field goal, they win and make the playoffs. They miss it. They completely miss. And so, Lamar drove them all the way down, got them into field goal range, and they missed the field goal. And immediately on Twitter, I see people saying that it's ridiculous that a game should come down to a football game, American football game should come down to a scrawny guy kicking a ball in between two poles. Well, I mean, it's the game. We never complain about it for any other moment, but now we're going to complain about it when it comes down to a game winner making a playoff. So my point is that you're never going to be able to please everyone. In regards to LeBron, I don't see the All-Star voting with him specifically being a product of him missing time. In my opinion, I just see a changing of the guard. And this reminds me of the MJ thing back in 2002, 2003, where Michael Jordan wasn't voted a starter. Obviously, he was able to be voted in by coaches. And even then, like, if you remember, Isaiah Thomas talked Vince Carter into letting MJ start. So there's I don't mind stuff like that. You know, we kind of bending the rules or whatever. But in regards to my question to you, let me come to a question to you. What if LeBron doesn't make the All-Star game? Are you happy with Silver creating an extra spot for LeBron?
I don't think so unless it's the final season. I heard on the Zach Lowe pod that they referenced the examples of Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade, which Adam Silver, put them two into the game during what was Dwayne Wade's farewell tour. We didn't know it was going to be Dirk Nowitzki's final season at the time, but it did turn out to be. And I remember watching that All-Star game at the time, and I didn't really have a gripe with Adam Silver doing that, so I couldn't say for sure whether I would have a gripe with Adam Silver doing it if it was LeBron's last season. Again, I do believe LeBron will go out with a farewell tour. I don't think this is a guy that's going to want to sneak out the back door. So in that sense, I think Adam Silver could take a pretty good guess that this is not going to be LeBron's last season. So if he missed out on the All-Star game, then kind of fair. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, great question. I think you cannot make that decision without him making the announcement. You can't assume that. So if he doesn't make it, he doesn't make it. And right now, there's 14 players voted ahead of LeBron at the current moment. And I'm just going to go through the list, and I want you to speak up when you hear a name that LeBron James should be ahead. Luka Doncic, Giannis, Jokic, Maxey, Brunson, Curry, Cunningham, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Donovan Mitchell. I didn't hear you speak up. So,
do you want to keep going past LeBron and see what that's like?
Yeah, so that's the top 10. And there's 4 other guys on that list that are voted ahead of him. And the All-Star game is about the best players this season. And it shouldn't be about, it shouldn't be. A lot of times it is about a popularity contest and about your name. But in my opinion, the All-Star game should always be about the best players that's performing this season. I mean, maybe we could put an asterisk and I could argue with Curry, but, that's another story for another day.
Ooh, tough crowd from Drew for Steph Curry there. I think Steph Curry's having a great season, even if the Warriors aren't. I feel like I could talk to death about the Warriors as such an interesting team this season, but we're going to leave the West for now. The West have had it all their own way for too long, Drew, and after what felt like a lot of Western domination really in recent weeks, especially coming into the start of the season, we were talking about how stacked the West was, how open the East was. Well, prior to last night, because I always write these agendas the night before, dear listener, so I want you to know that before last night, the three of the top 4 hottest teams in the NBA were all out East. My list was the Cavs, the Sixers, and the Celtics, but then the Cavs went and lost to the Pistons last night. I actually did a rare thing last night, Drew. I put a bet on a couple of NBA games. I just had a little bit of money left over in a betting account that I'd used over Christmas for some football accumulators, as we call them here, parlays in the States. And so I decided to put it on because the NBA had quite a nice slate of games. I was bedding in to watch a couple anyway, and I bet on the Cavs. That was the first one straight out of the gate, and they let me down, which goes to show you maybe you should never trust the Cavs this season. But you watched them in that game against the Nuggets. We've not really discussed them properly, but we mentioned that it was a good game against the Nuggets. But when we talked more about the sort of Nuggets young guys stepping up in that one and making it more of a game, the Cavs are still a very interesting team, I think. And basically the big issue for me last night against the Pistons, Drew, I don't know if you got a chance to catch any of it. Obviously, we record this quite early on a Monday morning, so you look at the box score of it though, and shot attempts to me, like it feels like the Pistons just won the numbers game, and the eye test kind of proved that as well. It feels like the Cavs are shot shy, and that's part of the issue really. Is it's not a load of guys, of course, who are going to jack up shots. You got Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, who you expect to be taking most of the shots. You expect to be bringing the ball up the floor and creating shots for other players as well. And Donovan Mitchell has proven time and time again this season that he can carry that weight. Darius Garland 0 for 7 from 3 last night, which is never going to carry any weight really. But then I look even further along the box score, and Evan Mobley is someone who's really disappointed me this season, only in the sense that, like, my preseason expectation was that he would take another leap this season, that we'd finally see the Evan Mobley that we were expecting to get coming out of the draft. And for him to come away from the game, and listen, the Pistons are a brilliant team. They're so hard-nosed. They're going to fight for every single rebound and all those kinds of things. But they only out rebounded the Cavs by 1 last night. They beat them on the offensive glass by 3 rebounds, but not a lot in that really. And yet the Cavs center Evan Mobley has 4 rebounds total in the game. Craig Porter Jr., the point guard coming off the bench for the Cavs, had 6 rebounds. Just not good enough, really. And like time and time again, just when I think the Cavs are on the rise because they'd won 3 games in a row, they just find a way to disappoint. And shout out to the Pistons, by the way, not taking anything away from the Pistons, but definitely disappointed in the Cavs this season.
Yeah, I mean, before this game, they were on a 3-game winning streak. They had won 5 out of their last 7 games. And the turning point for the Cavs were a couple of things. Is that they were finally starting to get healthy. I mean, their big 4 of Jared Allen, Mobley, Mitchell, and Garland had only played 8 games combined before the Denver game on Friday. And so those 2 aspects, along with their shooting had been poor. They attempt the most 3-pointers in the NBA, tied with Golden State. However, they're 22nd in percentage. If we revert back to last season, when they were the number 1 seed, where they were, their record was crazy, but they were shooting the ball exceptionally well. They were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league. So, now that they started to get healthy, but then we have to give that game last night context as well, is because, again, there's no Jared Allen. I'm not sure why he was missing, but he all of a sudden had been playing well. They got dominated by Houston last week, and the coach called him out. And so since then, Jared Allen responded with two consecutive double-doubles. He started off that game against Denver really well. But to your point, Evan Mobley has to step up. I mean, he is underplaying. He's on a 5-year, $269 rookie max deal, and his numbers are way down. I mean, he was 0 for 5 from the free throw line on Friday. He's shooting the ball poorly, and for him to play 32 minutes and have 15 points and 4 rebounds is just unacceptable. So this team has been, coined as soft. That's why the coach called him out. So, they need more consistency from the bigs. They've been telling the guards to feed the bigs more, get them involved offensively. But, again, you got to create your own offense sometimes, and that's by attacking the offensive glass. You only have 1 offensive rebound from Mobley. And, again, their shooting numbers are down 14 of 42, 33%. So, when they don't shoot it well and their bigs don't come to play, that has been a recipe for the lack of success for the Cleveland Cavaliers. But, again, no Jared Allen. Jared Allen has been playing very well over the last couple of games. So I still feel pretty good about where Cleveland is. My only question mark is Darius Garland. How healthy is he? Remember, he missed the playoffs last year with that big toe. He's been in and out of the lineup so far this season. You mentioned he was 0 for 7 from downtown.
Yep.
And, when you have, for our listeners out there, you might be thinking, oh, it's just a toe, get on with it. Trust me. I remember thinking back in 2000 when Shaq dealt with the big toe injury. And in my rookie pro year, I had a pinky toe injury. And those toes, you don't realize how much you need, how much you rely on them to move around. So, a lot of question marks with the Cavs, but if they can get this thing going, and because they're still very talented, they're not a team I would want to face in the East.
Yeah, that's fair enough. The only thing I would counter to the Jarrett Allen injury, because obviously Max Strus and Dean Wade are still on the sidelines as well. Larry Nance Jr., I'm not sure how important he is to the sort of Cavs overall system really, but he's still on the sidelines too. Was that the Pistons came into this one without Jalen Duren, without Karis LeVert, without Tobias Harris, and still got 25 from Dennis Jenkins off the bench. And to be fair, it was basically won by the bench really. 11 from Javonte Green, Ron Holland, and Jaden Ivey, giving them some nice minutes too. So a question of depth definitely for the Cavs, a question of adaptability, a question of systems. But as you say, we'll see over the course of the season with the Cavs whether they can straighten those things out. But I do still want to talk about two of the hotter teams out west, Drew, because I referenced a couple of weeks ago in my understated story of the week Paul George's resurgence with the Philadelphia 76ers, and now we're kind of seeing the Joel Embiid resurgence really finally for the Sixers. They've finally been able to get Maxey, Edgecombe, PG and Embiid on the court together and get a tune out of them all together too. And I'm now wondering, like, I was looking at the standings the other day, and Philadelphia are up to 5th in the standings, 3 straight wins, 6 of 4 in their last 10. I'm sure it's like 4 of 6 in their last few games as well. And this looks like a team that's really on the rise, and suddenly that team that me and you were talking about at the start of the season is having this young revolution. I really like Q Grimes off the bench. I know he's not necessarily like a young guy in NBA terms, but someone who doesn't have necessarily a ton of NBA experience, but is giving them really, really good minutes this season. And I really like this Philadelphia 76ers team. The biggest question with these guys is always going to be health. With Paul George and Joel Embiid, especially in the twilights of their careers, there's always going to be a question of health. But again, like you said with the Cavs, I'm not sure I'd want to face this Philadelphia team in a 7-game series.
I'm gonna put it out there, and I know this is later on in our segment. For a little spoiler alert, we have our big predictions for 2026, and one of mine is that Philadelphia is going to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Ooh,
you look at this roster, Josh. Paul George, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Quentin Grimes, Jared McCain can play. I mean, his role has been minimized because of the resurgence of the rookie VJ Edgecombe, and let's not forget that Kelly Oubre is still injured, and he's on his way back. Think about the start that he had to the season. I mean, he was playing incredible. This team is the healthiest it's been in 2 years. So much so that a week ago, Paul George got a nice little dunk in the game, and you saw the explosion off the bench. You saw the excitement. And then in New York, Joel Embiid got his first dunk of the season, and you saw the the excitement throughout the bench, throughout the entire roster. Now you might say, well, Joel Embiid is 7 foot. I mean, it's not a big deal. But, I mean, that to me is telling me that he has trust. Trust in it. He's starting to get trust in his body. And so Philadelphia is one of those teams that, if they're going to rise up the standings, so they're not going to sit where they are. So I'm not worried about them facing a Knick in the first round or anything like that. But, they're 19-14. They're 5 games above 500 for the first time this season. And 11 out of their next 15 games are at home. On top of that, strength of schedule for January, they have the 24th weakest schedule. So along with the schedule, along with getting some home cooking, I foresee this team going on a roll, and every piece is put in their place because there's no question about it. Maxey's the guy. He's the face. He's the franchise guy, averaging 30 points a game. And you don't need as much out of Paul George and Embiid. You just need them to be healthy, because both of those players can win you a series alone. They just got to make sure that their body's right. So Philadelphia, look out. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say to play devil's advocate for that is a weak schedule and a big run up to the playoffs may mean that they're not quite ready for crunch time. Who knows? I'm definitely intrigued to see. I think you're right, Drew. Like this is a team that I've mentioned. I do really like. So I'll be intrigued to see what they can do in the East. We keep saying the East is wide open, so who knows? Want to move on to the Celtics. They broke the Clippers' win streak in a game with some elite shot making on both sides over the weekend. Jaylen Brown once again proving he's one of the best players in the NBA, the best player on the court in this one with 50 points, and he called himself the best two-way player in the world in his press conference after. I want to pitch this straight to you, Drew. To be honest, do you think that Jaylen Brown has a point to call himself the best two-way player in the world, or do you think he's just in the ideal situation right now because he gets a lot of touches, he gets to take all the shots, he's got the greenest of green lights in the green of Boston? What do you say, Drew? Ideal situation, or do you think this is a guy who is genuinely one of the elite two-way players? I was trying to listen in my head before, and I was like, to be fair, he might have a point.
I mean, all we got to do is ask you. I mean, I'm pretty sure you saw that Clipper game the other day when he dropped the 50 ball on them on your team. And who was he guarding? Kawhi Leonard. And Kawhi Leonard had been cooking over the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And he kept him quiet, you know. So, and on the other side of the ball, you give him a 50-piece. So, without a doubt, he is. And the narrative is slowly starting to shift, because what has the narrative been about Jaylen Brown all of these years? That he's a Robin, right? He can't be a number one option. Well, he's proven that. I mean, and the Celtics this season were one of those teams where we thought they were tanking, right? You trade away Porzingis and Holiday. You lose Tatum through a season-ending injury with the Achilles, and all of a sudden they're making noise in the East. And Jaylen Brown, I mean, he is averaging the most points per game in Celtics history at 30.1. That stat to me is phenomenal. Think about all you got to do is go in the Garden and look at the jerseys that's hung up there. Larry Bird, KG, Paul Pierce. He's averaging more than any Boston Celtic ever. That's pretty remarkable. And let alone on the other end, he's getting the job done. And also, he just mentioned the other day that he is also getting rid of the narrative that basketball players can't do anything outside of hoops, because he's getting into this streaming and as well. He's doing a lot of the stuff off the court that will be, if he was struggling individually, if the Celtics were struggling, the first thing the fans will say is that he's distracted because he has too much going on off the court. So shout out to Jaylen Brown. Like, he's doing his thing. It's going to be interesting, that dynamic. The best part of it, I'm not even going to get into him and the Tatum thing. The good thing about his play is that whenever Tatum decides to come back, Tatum can afford to be patient because he knows that Jaylen Brown can carry the team.
Yeah, I don't mind getting a little bit into that Tatum and Brown thing, Drew, because you mentioned that he was considered the Robin for so long. I'm glad that we're giving Jaylen Brown his flowers, to be honest, because I think you only have to look back to the Celtics championship run of 2024. Jaylen Brown wins Finals MVP, and part of that was because he was, the better scorer of the two of them, but also he was guarding the other team's best player. He was guarding Luka Doncic against the Dallas Mavericks in that Finals run, and this is a player who I think, like, I don't ever really believe these days, and we've mentioned about the death of the three-headed monster, we've mentioned about the death of big threes and all those kinds of things. I don't think it has to be Batman and Robin. These NBA players, if you are good enough to be a Robin on a team, it means you're elite enough to be a Batman as well, basically, and that is what I think you see with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on any given night, and it's why the Celtics have been so great for so many years now with them at the helm, is that on any given night, one of them can be Batman, the other one can be Robin. Jason Tatum can play make and do all kinds of other things, can bring down boards, can bring the ball up the floor. Jaylen Brown, all the things I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but all the narratives about his left hand have suddenly dissipated now that he is a bit more of a ball handler, showing that he can play make a bit more. Still defends, as you mentioned, with Kawhi, the best player on the other team, held Kawhi to just 22 the other night, and it was other guys for the Clippers who had to get it going, really. And shout out to Derek Jones Jr. Ashamed to see him go down with the same injury against the same team. That's awful luck from him after pouring in 19 against the Celtics. But Jaylen Brown is good enough to be the Batman, like you say. When Jason Tatum comes back, the brilliant thing about Jaylen Brown being the Batman is that Tatum can be the Robin. Tatum can look back to that 2024 Finals run and say, you know what, I'm happy to take a back seat here. I'm happy to play make, happy to do the dirty work, because I'm going to let Jaylen go and pour 50 on, one of the most informed teams in the NBA right now. So absolutely shout out to Jaylen Brown. Glad that me and Drew are here to give him his flowers, because it is long overdue.
And let me just say this, because you mentioned that Finals run, just for our listeners. When Jason Tatum was at his peak, Jaylen Brown won Eastern Conference MVP and Finals MVP that season. So to wrap up this conversation, in today's NBA, I don't believe you have to have a Batman and Robin. I believe you can have a two-headed monster because of the amount of possessions that you have per game. Now, there's so many possessions that there is room for two guys like Tatum and Brown.
Absolutely, yeah. It's what separates the good teams from the elite teams for me. And this Boston team, somehow, with everything that happened in the off season, everything that happened to Tatum in the postseason last season as well, just still managing to be an elite team. So shout out to Joe Mazzulla and Brad Stevens out there for a great job. Speaking of front offices, Drew, maybe not doing as good jobs, but I want to look at the teams who are tanking this season, because again, this is one of the things that maybe it feeds into that conversation we had before about how whenever there is something that happens in the NBA, people want to bring in a new rule to try and shut it down. And tanking has been a thing for as long as I can remember, so it's definitely not a new thing. There's been constant conversations since I've been a fan of the NBA about how you can stop teams from tanking and all these kinds of things. We've got the Wizards and the Jazz this season as two of the sort of main ones that everyone is looking at now, really, because they both owe top 8 protected first round picks to other teams in the 2026 draft, and if they don't finish with one of the 4 worst records, they have at least some chance of losing their first round pick entirely once the lottery is drawn. So again, it comes back to the conversations of how do we prevent this? There's been talk of scrapping or lessening, I should say, pick protections, which is something that I could be on board with, like limit the amount of flexibility you have in terms of protecting picks. I saw that the NBA may bring in, like, it's either top 4 or it's top 14 or there's no protection, that's it. And maybe that could incentivize teams. I think it would make trades better as well, to be honest, if there were less sort of able to be finicky around what protections are on picks. But the only concern I have with this, Drew, is that we've kind of seen in recent seasons, whenever there are new rules brought in for things, that putting in rules to prevent doesn't necessarily always prevent teams from doing these things, whereas putting things in to incentivize, for example, the in-season tournament has been a great thing to incentivize NBA teams to keep it going in that real slog point in the middle of the season. The play-in has been a major incentive for a lot of teams to not tank, but even then we're probably not happy about the amount of teams who just hover around 500 now these days. So again, it comes back to that conversation of maybe we're never going to be able to satisfy everybody. But I look at this and I wonder whether it's better to try and incentivize the teams who are tanking not to tank rather than trying to prevent them from tanking.
Yeah, that's a good point. But also the narrative of tanking, along with the narrative of load management, I personally feel like the NBA is slowly starting to get away from that. You don't hear as much load management anymore. And tanking, like, who's actually tanking? Because I'm looking at the standings right now. All you got to do is watch a Brooklyn Nets game. That team isn't tanking. Like, that team is playing hard every night. They've won 5 out of their last 10 games. Well, Washington Wizards, they're tanking. Well, they've won 5 out of their last 10 games. Well, okay, the Utah Jazz are tanking. Well, the Utah Jazz don't have their first round pick, so they don't have any incentive to tank. And they're 3 games out of the play-in. New Orleans, they're the worst team in the NBA. They're tanking. Well, they don't have their first round pick. So I don't know which teams really have the incentive of tanking this year. And I don't really get the feeling that many are, because a couple of reasons. I think if you look at teams like the Jazz, you look at Brooklyn, like, these teams have great young and up-and-coming coaches. And one thing that I've noticed about their teams is that they're building great culture with these young guys. And I think that's what a lot of these organizations are starting to understand, is that even if you don't have a chance to make the playoffs, or you're not going to be good now, it is very important to set standards, to set winning culture for your future. All you got to do is look at Washington, right? Like, Washington is a team that probably needs to tank. They need one of these generational players to go along with the great young players they have. Well, Cam, that came over from the Rockets, was benched because his last name leaves me, but
Whitmore.
Yeah, Cameron Whitmore, right?
Yeah.
So Cameron Whitmore is a talented young player who you think would fit a young team like the Wizards, so he can kind of get his numbers up. But he got benched because the organization said they didn't like the culture that he was standing. They didn't like his practice habits. So that is telling me a lot about these young teams. Is that I think we're kind of getting away from the tanking, and I'm not sure how much more you can kind of fiddle with it. But I'm with you on that point. I love to incentivize teams, and I think the play-in tournament is as it continues to grow and build steam and build momentum, that is going to get a lot of these teams to have more early success, so they're not really going to be in a position to tank later.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said here within that, and I want to picture something else as well, Drew, because I'm kind of wondering if tanking actually serves a purpose. So you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit here, but one way of looking at it is like any economy. Basically, there's always got to be some buyers and there's always got to be some sellers. That's the way that you create, supply and demand and all those kinds of things. Ultimately, not everybody can make the postseason. So are we always better to keep a scenario where we get the best possible product in the postseason, because that's the real showcase of the NBA? It's not to do down what the regular season is. I saw a good conversation between Kevin Durant and I think it was Brett Siegel, the journalist, the other day. Like Kevin Durant was talking about, like, fans and media moaned about the regular season and now the regular season is redundant. And I don't think that is it. Like, I think fans and media have definitely moaned about the regular season. I don't think it is completely redundant these days. I think we're seeing that this season. The regular season has been brilliant. As I mentioned, the in-season tournament has brought a lot to the regular season as well. But I wonder whether we're still better to focus on having the best possible product in the postseason, even if it means that in the regular season you get a handful of regular season games that just aren't particularly important. Like, there's 82 of these things for every single team. There are like thousands of NBA games every season, to the point where, like, or hundreds of NBA games every season, how can every single one of those be played like it's a playoff atmosphere? Like, I just don't think that is realistic. So I don't mind having teams that are looking to sell at some points to fuel the teams that are looking to buy and to get their way into the postseason and to be as good as possible in the postseason. And you've referenced it there as well, Drew. Like, young coaches, young guys on these teams. Like, I was pretty down on the Washington Wizards at the start of the season, and then you're right, like, they've won 5 of the last 10 games. I've been able to catch a couple more of those games. I really love Keyshawn George on the Washington Wizards. He seems like a great player. I was a little bit focused on Alex Sarr when we first had our discussion about the Washington Wizards. I kind of missed what other guys on that team are doing, and they're doing some really good stuff out there, and that's because these young players have been enabled to have this chance to be able to rise to the fore. So I think it's good. I think it's good for young coaches. We're seeing it with Jordi Fernandez, that me and you have given our flowers to this season. Will Hardy is another coach that I'm so fond of, and he's only in his late 30s. He's younger than LeBron James, and he's an elite coach in the NBA. So I just think that, like, there has to be a degree of not necessarily tanking, but there has to be bad teams, because there has to be someone who sells to the buyers. What do you think, Drew?
I was just gonna say that. I mean, there's been talk about shortening the NBA season and you'll keep it more competitive. The NBA has played 82 games for forever. I mean, yes, the game is faster. There's more possessions, so it's tougher to sustain this style in today's game. But at the end of the day, no matter how you fiddle the rules, there's always going to be good teams and there's always going to be bad teams.
Absolutely. I think I'm probably in favour of lessening the amount of games, to be honest. Like, I think one of the ways to improve the regular season product, and that's if we need to improve it. Again, I think this season has been brilliant, but we're seeing a lot of injuries these days to guys, and I think a really easy way to fix that, like, you look at the NFL season, what makes the NFL season so entertaining, what makes a Premier League season as entertaining as it is, and even it's a big issue in football, really, and it sort of, British football, soccer, if you're American, is that there are too many games extracurricular to just the Premier League, or the Champions League has expanded in recent seasons too. So in so many of these sports, we're questioning whether the load on the players is too great. They play international tournaments in the summer, and that's the same in basketball. Now you could play an 82 game season, play however many games in the playoffs as well if you're playing for one of the great teams, and then go away to the FIBA World Cup or the Olympics in the summer. And I think the strain is really a lot there. So I wouldn't necessarily be against lessening the amount of games. I take your point, Drew, that it's kind of always been this way, but I think you referenced it even yourself within that, is that I just think the product has improved as a whole. The game has got more intense. There's more of these sort of international tournaments and things to consider now as well. So I wouldn't necessarily be against reducing the amount of games.
Well, my counter to that is if you lessen the games, let's say if this season was 72 games instead of 82, you lessen it by 10 games. Think about all the players that's got hurt before January. You think it would change? These guys would still get hurt. So there's been so many injuries before we've even hit the halfway mark. I just think if you're going to get injured, you're going to get injured. It's sport. Think about how many injuries you have in the NFL. Think about how many injuries you have in Soccer Premier League, and they play once a week. I know some teams play European competition, so they play a little bit more. But if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt. My argument would be, how are there more injuries than there were, 30, 20 years ago with this much more information and technology? For me, the only place that I can pinpoint it to is that if you look across all these leagues, and I'm just going to use NBA, NFL, because those are the leagues I follow closely. You would know more about Premier League football. But the training camp in both of those leagues are non-existent. In the NBA, they used to have a 2-week, 2-a-day training camp to prepare guys for the NBA season. Now, training camp is like 4 days, and it's like they don't even practice anymore. Same thing with the NFL. Their preseason is non-contact, and then all of a sudden you're going into a very physical contact sport. So I just think that, these teams, these players aren't being prepared for the season like they used to be in the past, and that's why injuries are up.
Absolutely fair enough. I like your perspective on that, because I think it's very easy with NBA discussions to get yourself in echo chambers, and I feel like I've definitely been in an echo chamber with the regular season thing. I've actually never heard someone talk about it from the point of view of the training camps and things, so definitely interesting. I almost felt like getting my Iverson on there. We're talking about practice.
Man, I mean, but every NBA team had 2-a-days in the preseason.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, all you got to do is go to an NBA practice now or view one on NBA TV, and it's just it's a walkthrough. And then afterwards, everyone has their individual workouts. There's no hard scrimmaging contact. So, that's my 2 cents.
No, I like your 2 cents. I've got a lot of respect for that. I wasn't going to do an understated story segment this week, Drew, but to be honest, one of the results last night has kind of motivated me to, at least to an extent, or just for us to talk about the Phoenix Suns knocking off the OKC Thunder, because I mean this Thunder team have been shown only by one team really, with the San Antonio Spurs in recent weeks, but they've been shown a little bit like they're not the indestructible force that we thought they were. It doesn't mean they're not an elite basketball team. Of course they are an absolutely elite basketball team. They're still my favourites to come out the West, although I'm maybe gonna prove that a little bit wrong with my bold prediction in the next segment. So another little teaser for mine and Drew's predictions there. But I just want to shout out the Phoenix Suns, because 26 off the bench from Jordan Goodwin last night, another 24 from Devin Booker, who's been great all season, 22 from Dillon Brooks, who I've already mentioned is probably one of my surprises of the season, really, in terms of the offensive output that Dillon Brooks has been able to put in. And by the way, he's doing it against elite teams, so it kind of, poo-poos all that stuff we had back in the day when the Grizzlies played the Lakers in that series, and he was talking about poking the bear with LeBron and getting drawn into all that, and we wondered if he would ever be able to, do it at an elite level against elite teams. Well, Dillon Brooks is proving that against one of the most elite teams, and one of the most elite teams we've ever seen, by the way. And we should mention the OKC Thunder are missing Isaiah Hartenstein, Jalen Williams, and Ousmane Dieng. So a couple of bigs out of their rotation there. But this is a team that's still the starting 5 last night: Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Cason Wallace, who's a player that I'm really fond of, Luguentz Dort, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. Like, it's still not a bad starting lineup. Caruso off the bench, Aaron Wiggins off the bench, Kenny Hustle, Kenrich Williams, and Isaiah Joe, and players like that. AJ Mitchell, who's been able to give great minutes to the Thunder this season. So these are no chumps that the Phoenix Suns are facing. And if we're going to shout out all those other young coaches, Drew, in terms of Jordi Fernandez, in terms of Will Hardy, we've absolutely got to shout out first-time coach Jordan Knott this season, because what he's been able to do with this Phoenix Suns team, nothing short of incredible, really. I thought this would be a terrible Phoenix Suns team going into this season. 40 years of age, Jordan Knott has proven me completely wrong, and I'm very, very pleased that he has.
Yeah, that's a good shout there. I'm going to stay in the West in my understated story. I got to give a shout-out to Keontae George for the Utah Jazz. Straight up balling. Last 10 games, he's averaging 29.9 points, 7.2 assists, 4.9 rebounds, and 5 of those 10 games he's scored over 30 points. And you could argue if the Jazz were in the East, I mean, he would be fighting for an all-star spot, but the West is just loaded with guards, so he won't sniff it. But again, the Jazz, one of those young teams who, again, they have no incentive to tank. They got Lauri Markkanen. I know they've been talking about putting him on the trade block, but now I'm thinking, do you really? Like, you got Ace Bailey there, you got Keontae George with Lauri Markkanen. You're gonna. Why not just build around what you got? So shout out to him. That's balling. I don't think anyone saw that coming so far this season of what he's producing. So all of a sudden, the Jazz have a bright future.
That pick the Jazz are giving away is top 8 protected, by the way. So
right, okay,
yeah. So if they finish one of the I think it's bottom 4 worst record, then it goes away. Sorry, then they keep it, but there's a good chance it goes away if they don't. So there's still I guess some incentive to tank. But I'm with you, Drew. Like I wouldn't be tanking, and if I was Will Hardy, I'd almost be putting my neck on the line with my job here and saying, look, this is a team that I have built. You look at guys like Kyle Filipowski off the bench, Walton Clayton Jr. Me and my friend were discussing this the other day. Like, one of the most polite posters ever against the Boston Celtics the other day. I don't know if you've seen this, Drew. Derek White. It feels like Walton Clayton Jr. is in the air for about half an hour, and he just looks down at Derek White and he's like, "I'm sorry," and Derek White's like, "No, it's okay." And then there's like no fanfare after. He just like dunks it on his head, and then everyone gets back to their normal business. I've loved watching this Utah Jazz team. I don't want to see them make any big swings or anything. Like, by all means, have one of the worst 4 records in the league this season, get that top 8 pick in, and then I'd love to see what that comes in and looks like next season, because they've been able to get good minutes out of guys like Svi Mikhailuk this season, but if they can improve on that in terms of the starting 5, they've got Walker Kessler to come back into that starting 5 too. Yes. I think this is a fantastic team. This is a team that could cause a real upset in the West next season, and I'm absolutely excited to see that happen. I'm already excited whenever I watch their games this season. It's one of the teams that I think it's, again, there's that Glow show which I reference on here a lot. They always talk about League Pass teams, and if you're looking for a League Pass team to get behind, the Utah Jazz are absolutely one of those. We'll move on to bold predictions, Andrew, to round out this episode. Bold predictions for 2026 rather than just this week. I wanted to go a bit more bigger picture since it's our first episode of the new year. And I actually put mine on the agenda beforehand because I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what I was looking at. I teased it last week when we spoke about the San Antonio Spurs. I teased it a little bit before. I still have the OKC Thunder as favourites to come out of the West, whatever way the playoff brackets fall. Like, no one knows how they're going to fall yet, so I would still imagine the OKC Thunder are favourites to come out of the West. But my bold prediction, Drew, for 2026 is if the OKC Thunder have to face the San Antonio Spurs in a 7-game series, my OKC Thunder being the favourites thing might change, because I think the Spurs will beat the OKC Thunder over the course of a 7-game series. What do you think?
Yeah, you think they have their number, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and rightfully so. And I could argue that with you as well, but I'll be devil's advocate on that, and I will say that these losses for OKC is a good thing, because once they get into the nitty-gritty of a 7-game series, OKC will know how to counter those mistakes or those mismatches or whatever has gone wrong in the regular season. I think your point would be valid if OKC had more success against San Antonio, but I think them losing to them now is going to pay dividends for OKC down the line, and I just think that San Antonio needs a little bit more time. It's not their time yet, but I would not be surprised. And speaking of bold predictions, I kind of teed mine off a little bit earlier with Philadelphia, and I'm still going to stand by that. They are going to make the Eastern Conference Finals, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them make the finals. They're playing with house money. They got a number 1 option. They have 3 number 1 options on their team. I mean, Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey. They're getting healthy, and so I'm booking their ticket there. And if the balls bounce the right way, I would not be surprised to see them in the final. But for my bold prediction for this segment, I'm going to go a little bit shorter term, and I'm going to look at you focus on success. I'm going to look on the other end of the spectrum, because I went and looked up the all NBA losing streak. I just lost it. Okay. Yeah, back in 23-24, the Detroit Pistons set the record for the longest losing streak in a single season, losing 28 consecutive games. Well, my bold prediction for 26 is that the Indiana Pacers is going to break that record. Currently, they are on a 12-game losing streak, so they only have to lose just 16 more games. And you look at their schedule, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, I'm not sure if there's anybody on there that they can beat. And then you go look at the entire NBA's schedule for January, and they have the second most difficult schedule in January. So I put two and two together, and I'm thinking, aha, it's going to happen. They are going to lose 29 straight, and I don't even think they're going to win more than 10 games. They're 6-22 or 6-30 at the moment. And, yeah, it's going to be a blessing in disguise because they get Halliburton next year. They're going to get a top pick. But the Indiana Pacers is going to break the losing streak record in late January or early February, however their schedule kind of matches up to the timeline.
I'm not mad at that as a prediction. I watched them play the Magic last night. There's such a strange basketball team. I never want to accuse guys of quitting in games, but this team came out so hot against the Magic last night. I want to check what the score was at the half. It was 58-69, but maybe it was the first quarter. Then the first quarter, they went up by 10 or 15. It was incredible. Yeah, 36-28 to the Pacers in the first quarter. 10 points from Aaron Nesmith right out the gate, reminiscent of that playoff finals run for the Pacers last season. And it just felt like basically once they'd got that little bit of head of steam, they took their foot off the gas. They put 22 points in the second quarter, but the Magic put up 41 points in the second quarter. And basically from that point onwards, that was that set the tone for the rest of the game then, where the Pacers basically just went, okay, you can do whatever you want at this point now. And any attempts of the Magic being physical, the Pacers just kind of let them have their way with it. And obviously the Magic are a massively physical team. It's been one of their big strengths this season, but I was just so surprised by how much the Pacers basically rolled over for them. They actually beat them in terms of second half score. It was 69-66, but I think there was some garbage time minutes mixed into that as well. I'm so disappointed in the Indiana Pacers this season. Even reading through the rotation from last night's game, it's still not a bad team. Starting five: Andrew Nembhard, great player; Aaron Nesmith, great player; Pascal Siakam, great player. Off the bench, TJ McConnell, great player. Guys who gave them good minutes last season, like Jay Huff and Jarris Walker as well. This team shouldn't be as bad as it is, and yet me and you are sat here and both kind of agreeing with each other that this could be, a team who sets a new record for a losing streak. Listen, that Pistons team, as Kate Cunningham said at the time, wasn't as bad as setting that record for a losing streak either. Maybe it is just almost like a purpose to them losing that many games. But yeah, I hate seeing teams lose that aggressively and that egregiously, really, over the course of a season. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Indiana Pacers did. But anyway, we're not going to lose any more time or energy over the Indiana Pacers, Drew. We're going to round off this first episode of 2026. Absolute pleasure to do it with you as always, man. Happy New Year to everybody out there. I hope it's a long and prosperous one for all of you. Last thing that leaves me to say is, Drew, lead us out.
Yeah, Happy New Year to our listeners out there. Don't forget, you really help us out. Go out there, leave a comment, subscribe, just get engaged with us on the Twitter sphere. We're going to continue to level up for 26, and we hope that you are with us along the way. Until then, we'll see you guys next week. Peace out, NBA fans.